Wow, this is about essentials. Yeah. Okay, that is much better. If you're just starting watercolor, you've probably seen the whole supply lists and it's overwhelming. The truth is you probably only need these 5 essentials to start off with watercolor, and you can build up later if you feel like you need the rest. And I'll share exactly what they are in just under 12 minutes. The wrong tools will frustrate you and waste your money, but the right ones will make your watercolor freeing and fun. And yes, you are worth that good paper. The top number 1 is watercolor paints. We need those colors, right? When I started, I read a lot about like the quality paints. They're less chalky, which means they're more vibrant, really strong. A small tube can go a long way. And if you're starting out and you want to get just the essentials, I think these are the colors that I would have wanted at the start. All brands have specific feel to them. Their binders, the way they mix the pigments with a certain binder is different. I would say you just have to get the feel of each different brands. Really, there's no one brand that fits everybody. And so I have quite a lot of different brands that I use, but generally speaking, most of them are from Daniel Smith. Now, having that said, if you're looking for an essential starter kit, I would say go for 1 warm blue, 1 cool blue, and then go for 1 cool red and 1 warm red, although this is orange, but it's nice to have an orange because then you don't have to mix it sometimes. But anyhow, and then 1 warm yellow, which often typically people will go for cad yellows, but you would want to look into that yourself to see which colors you feel more connected to, I would say. And then cool yellow. So these will give you a good starting point. These are the primaries, the blues, the reds, the yellows. You just need these 3 to mix other colors. And then you can branch off to get the purples, the oranges, or even the greens. But getting the primaries is the starting point, and you can see if you like it or not. Okay, so a lot of people talk about, well, why not get like a low quality grade, like whatever paint that you can get your hands on. This is basically the only thing that I have around my house, which is like not artist grade level, and we'll do a test with this to see how different it is. And this one is from Tiger that I bought for my son, and as you can see, it's not strong in pigment and it looks quite chalky, but we'll see how that one looks. The next essentials that you definitely need is palettes. I think I'm going to do a whole video around the best palette, the best surfaces, the best paints, but what it comes down to how you really work. And I think different artists have different needs, and you just have to try them out to see what works for yourself. But this is the palette that I use. I'll have all the supplies in the description below. So why do you need a palette? Really, you can use whatever you have at home, like a ceramic plate works very nicely. This one is a plastic, but typically watercolor artists would use these plastic ones or the ceramics. And there's different reasons why they would use one. I mean, people don't like the plastic because it beads up, but I have no issues with that using this one. The ceramic palette, it gives like that minimalist feel and I love it. But how I differentiate the use of these is that when I don't have a specific color on this palette, then I'll typically get out some color on this ceramic palette, and then I lay down the other colors that I will use for one painting, and at the end I'll just mix them all up and then use it for the background of a painting or something, and I clean this at the end of a painting, which I didn't do because I was playing with my son. The next thing is paper. Now, there's a lot of debate around paper. I think you've heard this many times around. It's better to get 100% cotton and then watercolor paper that's thick, because you add water, which means that if the paper is not heavy enough, it'll start buckling and it'll cause irritations while you're painting. So this is the Bao Hong, which I think is like a cheaper option. You can get it through Temu. I'm thinking about doing a video around the Temu supplies that I have, but this is really the only thing that I buy from Temu that I find is worth the money. These, I typically use it for like a bit of experimentations, because as artists, I think a huge part of our creative process is playing and experimenting and exploring what kind of things we can create. So I use the Baohong typically for explorative works or even some warm-up sometimes. And then I use Arches or the Winsor & Newton 100% cotton hot press paper. There's cold press, but I'm gonna get into the surfaces for another video. So you may ask, what does it mean to use 100% cotton and a non-100% cotton? The way that the paper absorbs and can take a lot of beating is different. So you may find that even lifting the watercolor paint off of the paper is easier when the paper is 100% cotton. So this one I created of my son, and this was the Canson XL. There was an artist who was talking about like her painting on this paper and got slammed, which was kind of interesting. Yeah, I shouldn't laugh because it's not a fun thing to get slammed for not being archival and whatnot. And that's a whole new topic. I'm thinking about covering that in the future video. But anyway, so this is not 100% cotton. And then this one is on Artistico Fabriano 100% cotton hot press. And can you see the difference? Obviously, when you paint the second time, it's never the same thing, I know. But this one even has, the cotton one, the bigger one, has like fiber paste. And you can see that this is already buckling because I added a lot of things. But you can see that this one has caused more granulation than this one. I mean, I really love using like not 100% cotton paper as well. But when I consider that it might free me up with a lot of other things, like obviously scrubbing up some areas or how the pigment reacts on the surface, and I just feel like using the 100% cotton paper has always like gave me that artistic qualities, would I say, that I'm going after. So I would say just pick the one you like. This comes with experimentation, really, just like doing tons of work, and then you'll figure out what works for you. But I would say after all these hundreds and hundreds of painting, where I landed is basically on these are the papers that I typically use, and I go back and forth. And these are blocks, which is nice because then you don't have to think about stretching them, getting a tape, which I'm going to talk about later, but getting a tape and putting them down so it doesn't buckle and it takes a lot of water and so forth. I would say just get the blocks if you don't want to think about anything else. That's how I go by it. I'll share with you what using the artist grade paint on the non 100% cotton paper looks like, which I don't buy anymore, so I'll have to use a part of the sketchbook from before, and also what high quality paint looks like on that, like vice versa. I'll show you what each one would look like. Now that I have done the test between 100% cotton paper as well as non-cotton paper right here, and also a test between artist grade paint and this cheap paper, the cheap watercolor paper against the artist grade, so right here against the artist water grade, I would say that they were much easier basically to handle with. When I look at this glaze and wash of Tiger's cheap watercolor, it does the job quite nicely. I mean, I wouldn't say that looks way better than this one. I mean, they both look equally good, but when I used the artist grade, it was much more smoother to lay down on. So I don't see there's like a huge difference, but it did feel different using it. And there's more difficulty in me creating the wash right here, whereas with the artist grade, I just felt like the wash was way more easier. And the lifting test, I would say this one lifted much more easier than this one. So that was the cheap watercolor paper, and this was the artist grade. Now let's look at the Arches, and this is hot press paper. So we have to bear in mind, I don't use cold press. The lifting was really difficult with the cheap watercolor. It was way difficult than the artist grade. So definitely the artist grade watercolor did well on the hot press paper. Let's look here, the glazing, it was so nice doing with the artist grade watercolor and on this 100% watercolor hot press watercolor paper. So overall, I think the artist grade wins, but it's not like the gap is not really huge. So I mean, can you paint with non-artist grade? I think so, you can. But I would say it makes my life easier to use better grade materials. The next essential would be watercolor brushes. Now, why do you need to get specifically watercolor brushes? They hold more water than any other form of brushes that are for oils, acrylics, and gouache, and so forth. So that's the most important bit. So you definitely need a watercolor brush. Now, these are the 4 that I typically go back over and over, even these 3, over and over again. And if I have these 4, I'm basically happy for most of my works. Now, the reason why I say most of my works is because the size really matters. I typically work on basically this size, and I don't normally cover up the whole background, which then you'll have to have more bigger brushes. And when I go much bigger, like the Imperial full-size sheet, which is these measurements, then I'll have to use these flat brushes, this bigger brushes. But typically I only use these. You'll definitely need one kind of round brush. This is the round 12. Again, I'll have everything down below. And this, the Da Vinci Casanio, these mop brushes, I love it. And then this is the long round Princeton Velvet Touch, love it. And if I had to pick one out of all of these, I'll just pick this one. It's the long round. I have the 8 and the 6, and basically why it's good is because it holds so much water and the tip is so pointy. So for a portrait artist like me, this tip, this fine detail, this one, you see here, is very important, but because I want to get those very delicate lines of the eyes, the eyelashes and eyelids and so forth, so it really helps. This really depends on what it is that you are painting as an artist. If it's no, I paint more abstract big shapes, then it might be the flat brush that you're looking for. So all these have different kinds of strokes that they create. So you need to know what it is that you love painting the most and then nail it down to what kind of brush. These all create different marks. And then the other things that you probably have lying around is a pencil, an eraser, and you need water, and you need a cloth like a rag or a paper towel. These are the 5 final ending things that you would definitely need. Now let me share with you one by one. So this is a technical pencil. I love using this one often. And this is a Mono Zero eraser. And the reason why I love using this is because it can get into the fine details. So again, because I'm a portrait artist, I can work on very fine details. This one comes in handy when I want to just erase a tiny bit. And then this one is a kneaded eraser that I have inside. As a watercolor artist, it's better that you use kneaded eraser when you want to erase things because you can damage the paper. And then, of course, rags or paper towel. I just love using paper towels because they're easy to toss and everything, but I know it's not environmentally friendly, so I am thinking about other options like a fiber cloth or something, but I want something beautiful to look at, so I would have to think about that. And then water. This is a flower vase that I just picked up in Germany when I was living in Munich from the garbage that was just outside. So a flower vase actually works well because it's huge and it's already murky because I kind of was painting before this. But anyways, and I also use like these tiny jars to fill up clean water for when I want to put water on the surface of the paper. So that's basically it for the essentials. That's all you really need. Now, I want to go over some other things. How many minutes was that?